I decided to give up on my girlfriend. I wasn't going to marry her anymore. I didn't care who she married in the future. To me, she was just someone else's wife, someone I could use for my own pleasure. Forget being gentle, it was my turn to take control. It was all because of her very close male colleague, Ethan Miller. Just because he had helped her when she first started her job, she felt an immense debt of gratitude. Whenever Ethan asked for help, she could never refuse. But once I saw things clearly, she panicked, agreeing to my every demand. In the end, under pressure from her parents and with my explicit refusal to marry her, she tearfully married Ethan Miller. Well, how the tables have turned. Now it's my turn to ask your wife for help, isn't it? You manipulative prick, give him a taste of his own medicine. Yeah, that felt good. Babe, I have to work late tonight, might be back a little later. You eat without me, okay? That was the last text Willow Hayes sent me. I stared at the messaging app, my heart completely still. I almost wanted to laugh. How many times had she used the same excuse? Wasn't she tired of it? On a whim, I opened my social media feed. After a few refreshes, a new post jumped out at me. It was from Ethan. He'd posted a photo. In it, Willow was wearing an apron. Her profile to the camera, she worked in his open-plan kitchen. The warm lighting created a very cozy atmosphere. The caption was the real kicker, my virtuous Vivi is working so hard. I can only repay your life-saving kindness by offering myself to you, Doge Faceheart. It was posted 2 hours ago. 0 likes, 0 comments. Not his style at all. Damn it, that bastard had probably made it visible only to me again. A wave of fury shot straight to my head. My fists clenched instantly. The same old trick, a provocation disguised as carelessness, but aimed directly at me. I could almost picture Ethan's smug, punchable face as he posted it, waiting for me to lose my temper, waiting for me to start a fight with Willow. Then he would play the innocent victim. What? I was just joking around, thanking Vivi. Why is he angry again? See, Willow, he doesn't trust you at all. Trust. You two ground that to dust a long time ago. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Strangely, the intense rage didn't last. It was as if a bucket of ice water had been poured over it, sizzling out and leaving only a bone-chilling clarity. Argue? What was the point? Besides making myself look like a hysterical fool, what would I get? Her apology? I was sick of hearing it. A thought emerged with unprecedented clarity. This woman was a lost cause. At least not as a wife. A line I'd read somewhere flashed through my mind. If you're not going to marry her, who cares who she gets close to? That's right, I slapped my thigh as if in a moment of enlightenment. She was going to be someone else's wife anyway, so what the hell was I getting so angry about? But all the feelings I'd invested, the emotional energy I'd wasted, the internal damage I'd suffered, I couldn't just let all that go, could I? I had to collect some interest, right? With that thought, everything became clear. My mindset instantly switched from angry, suffocated boyfriend to a creditor ready to collect on a bad loan. I calmly took a screenshot, saving the evidence. I even took my time to admire Willow's profile in the picture. She had a nice slim waist. Around 10 that night, Willow dragged her work-weary body home. "You're back? Must have been a tough night at work," I said from the couch, not looking up from my phone. "Yeah, I'm exhausted," she grumbled habitually as she changed her shoes, her voice tinged with guilt. "Is that so?" I put down my phone, pulled up the screenshot, and turned the screen towards her. "Working late at Ethan's place? So what was the project? Unclogging his drain or fixing his computer? Something worthy of a social media commendation?" The color drained from Willow's face. Her eyes widened as she leaned in to look at the screen, her lips trembling slightly. "No, let me explain. His pipe really did burst. It was leaking everywhere, almost flooding the apartment below. He couldn't handle it alone, so he called me in a panic. I just thought I'd go help for a bit and come right back. I didn't tell you the truth because I was afraid you'd get the wrong idea," she stammered, flustered, her eyes filled with panic and that familiar look of guilt. In the past, seeing her like this would have cooled my anger by at least a third. Then I'd start grilling her about why you always lie to me first. Why is it always him? And do you even see me as your boyfriend? She would always say, "I know I was wrong. I'll change next time. He just helped me once. I feel bad refusing." And then, the next time Ethan played the victim, she'd run right back to repay her debt. But today, I just watched her silently, my face blank, my eyes possibly holding a hint of Pity. Yes, that was it, pity. Pity for her for using the same old excuses over and over. And pity for the old me, who used to actually believe them. I listened silently as she stumbled through her explanation. She even tried to grab my phone at one point, but I gently pushed her hand away. When she finished, the silence was deafening. She watched me nervously, waiting for the storm she was expecting. But it never came. I just nodded, as if to say I get it, then said nothing more as I stood up and walked straight to the bedroom. That silence scared her more than any shouting match could have. Wait, she panicked, just as I knew she would, and followed me in, grabbing my arm from behind. Don't be mad, I know I was wrong, I really know I was wrong. Next time he needs anything, I'll tell you first, we can talk about it, okay? Please don't ignore me. Her voice was choked with tears. She was genuinely scared. I turned around and looked at her red-rimmed eyes. The frozen lake in my heart showed no signs of thawing. Tired? I asked. She froze for a second, then nodded numbly. Then give me a head massage. It's pounding, I said calmly, then added after a pause, or, you could buy me that gaming controller I've had sitting in my shopping cart. Pick one. Willow clearly hadn't expected this. She stood there, stunned, for a long moment. The anticipated fight hadn't happened. Instead, there were these specific demands. A massive wave of guilt and the fear of losing me seized her, leaving her no time to think about the meaning behind my request. The massage, I'll do it, she answered, almost snatching the words, and immediately pushed me to sit on the edge of the bed. Her warm fingers, trembling slightly, found my temples and began to knead them diligently. I closed my eyes, enjoying her rare placating service. Later, could you? I drawled. But the taste. She hesitated. Forget it if you don't want to. I guess I still can't compare to. I'll do it. She cut me off before I could finish. Just don't be angry. Yeah, a pretty good start to collecting my interest. Ever since that strategic shift that night, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The old feelings of frustration and suppressed anger were replaced by a strange sense of ease. Once my mindset changed, everything looked better. I started calling up the guys I hadn't seen in ages to play basketball after work. The feeling of being drenched in sweat was so much better than stewing in anger at home, or I'd just sink into the couch and lose myself in the games that used to be constantly interrupted by sudden emergencies. Even at work, my efficiency shot up since I was no longer bogged down by emotional turmoil. My boss, Mr. Davis, even commented, "You've been in good form lately, Smith." Even Willow noticed the change in me. She'd sneak glances at me, her eyes filled with confusion and a hint of unease. She was probably braced for the silent treatment or for me to bring up the past, but I refused to play along. I ate well, slept soundly, and even hummed off key songs from time to time. "You seem to be in a really good mood lately?" She finally couldn't help but ask tentatively one morning at breakfast. "Yeah," I said, taking a bite of my fried egg and admitting it freely. "I've just figured some things out. Makes you feel lighter. I guess I wasn't open-minded enough before." She looked at me, trying to find a hint of sarcasm on my face, but failed. My smile was utterly sincere and bright. This good mood peaked when Ethan acted up again. That evening, just after we'd finished dinner, Willow's phone rang. A unique ringtone, a special contact name, Ethan Miller, colleague. He even added colleague in parentheses. So self-deceiving. She picked up the phone, her expression changing slightly. She subconsciously glanced at me, her eyes filled with that familiar tension and conflict. I didn't need to guess the drama on the other end of the line. It was either he'd suddenly collapsed and needed to be taken to the hospital, or he had a cockroach in his apartment and needed someone to be brave for him. "Sure enough," she answered, and after a few mumbles her brow furrowed. "What? That's serious? Are you okay on your own?" She covered the receiver and looked at me, mouthing silently. "He's sick, sounds really bad, he's all alone." In the past, my face would have turned black as coal and the atmosphere would have dropped to freezing. But today, I just raised an eyebrow and gave a magnanimous wave, my voice just loud enough for the person on the other end to hear. "Go on, go. If it's serious, you shouldn't delay. The man needs help, you should go check on him, take him to the hospital if you need to." I even added, thoughtfully, "Want me to go with you? An extra pair of hands is always good." Willow was completely stunned, standing there frozen with the phone in her hand. Ethan on the other end was probably just as shocked. She likely thought I was being sarcastic and nervously scanned my face. but all she found was sincere and amused concern. "No, that's okay," she said hurriedly into the phone. "Wait a minute, I'll be right over." After hanging up, she just stood there, a bit lost. I'll just go check on him and come right back. It should be quick," she promised, lacking confidence. "No problem, no rush. Take good care of the patient," I said with a wide smile. "Call me anytime if you need help." She left with a head full of questions and an even greater sense of unease. The moment the door closed, I grabbed my phone. "All right, guys, get online. Daddy's free tonight, ready to carry you all to victory." If it weren't for Ethan's call, I wouldn't have had an excuse to dodge my mom's video check-in. "Thanks, bro." I was in the middle of a great game when a notification popped up. Ethan again. A social media post this time. A photo taken from the perspective of someone lying in bed. In the blurry background, you could see the figure of a woman bustling about. I recognized the apron. The caption read, "True feelings are revealed in sickness. Thank God you're here, weak emoji." I almost laughed out loud. "Dude, is that all you've got? Besides posting on social media to provoke me, can't you come up with something new?" I didn't even bother to open the picture, just swiped away the notification and continued my quest for a pentakill. It was nearly midnight when Willow returned, her face etched with genuine exhaustion. She opened the door quietly and saw the living room light was still on and I was still gaming. She visibly relaxed, but then the guilt washed over her again. "How is he?" I asked without turning, my eyes fixed on the screen. "Oh, just acute gastroenteritis and a fever. He's taken his medicine and is asleep now," she answered cautiously, standing behind me. "Oh, good, as long as he's okay." I finished the game, put down my controller, and finally turned to look at her. "You must be tired too. Get some rest." No questions, no cold shoulder, not even a hint of anger, just concern. This was completely beyond her expectations. The defenses and explanations she'd been building up on her way home to counter my anger were suddenly useless. The feeling of punching the air only made her more flustered. An overwhelming wave of guilt washed over her. "I'm sorry." Her voice trembled as she came over and hugged me from behind. "I broke my promise again. Don't be mad, I don't know what to do." I patted her hand. "I told you it's fine. It's good to be helpful." She hugged me tighter, as if I would disappear if she let go. "Is there anything you want me to do? As long as you're not angry, I'll do anything." She looked up, her eyes wet, filled with the desperation of someone trying to make amends at any cost. "Oh, the interest is delivering itself to my doorstep?" I stroked my chin, pretending to think. In the past, she'd get all shy and call me improper if I even asked her to wear slightly sexier underwear. I saw something online the other day. That master thing sounds interesting." I tried to make my tone sound like I was just curious. "Why don't you try saying it?" Willow's face turned scarlet in an instant, even the tips of her ears blushing pink. Her eyes darted away, and her lips moved, but no sound came out. She seemed to be having an intense internal struggle, but in the end guilt and fear overwhelmed her shame. In a tiny voice, barely squeezed from her throat, she whispered 2 words, "Master." It was as quiet as a mosquito's buzz, but she said it. A nasty little part of me felt immensely satisfied. "Awesome. Good girl," I said, smiling as I ruffled her hair. "Go run a bath for me. I'm tired, I want to soak." As if granted a pardon, yet with a strange new shyness, she scurried into the bathroom. I watched her go, a cold sneer on my lips. "Ethan, oh Ethan, you go to all the trouble of faking an illness, and all you get is a worn-out to the bone-tired maid. And me? I get to stay home, play games, and get called master. So who came out on top in this round?" Just then my phone lit up again. "It was Ethan." "What did you say to her?" She was in a hurry to leave just now, seemed a bit off. Reading the message, I could almost picture him lying in bed, fuming and utterly baffled. I slowly typed my reply. "Nothing much, just told her to take good care of you." Smiley face sent. Imagining his likely reaction, I hummed a happy tune and walked towards the bathroom. The water was just the right temperature. The feeling of collecting interest wasn't bad at all. A few days later, Ethan was presumably recovered and back to his usual attention-seeking self. He invited Willow and me to dinner over the weekend, ostensibly to thank her for taking care of him and for us all to catch up. A wolf in sheep's clothing, paying a visit. I knew exactly what he was up to. His provocations hadn't worked, so he was planning a direct confrontation. Willow hesitated, looking at me, afraid I'd be upset. I nodded readily. Sure, why not? It's a nice gesture. Besides, I was free. Might as well go watch the show. That weekend at the restaurant, Ethan sat across from us, all dressed up, confidently rattling off Willow's dietary restrictions and preferences as he ordered. Willow doesn't eat cilantro, likes her food less salty, and no ice in her drink. He finished with a smile at her, a look that screamed, "See how well I know you?" Willow looked awkward and stole a glance at me. I took a sip of tea and said to Willow with a smile, "You've got a great buddy there. He's even more thoughtful than I am. No wonder you go to him for everything." I deliberately emphasized the words "for everything." Willow's face paled slightly, her hands twisting nervously under the table. Ethan quickly jumped in, his words smooth as silk. "Not at all, we're just colleagues. We should look out for each other. You, on the other hand, are so busy with work it's inevitable you can't always be there for Willow. I just lend a hand." "You're right," I nodded in agreement, my tone sincere enough to join a political party. "If it weren't for a warm-hearted male buddy like you, I can't imagine how much our Willow would have to worry about. Unclogging drains, fixing computers, being a shoulder to cry on. It's a full package service on call 24/7, so much more useful than a boyfriend." Willow's head was bowed so low it was almost touching her chest. The smile on Ethan's face grew stiff. He probably hadn't expected this kind of reaction. Why did my praise sound so sharp? The rest of the meal passed with me offering sincere compliments to Ethan, Willow sitting on pins and needles, and Ethan forcing a smile. On the way back, Willow was unusually quiet. Once we were home, she finally broke, her voice choked with tears. "Those things you said. Were you being sarcastic? Are you still angry?" I looked at her red-rimmed eyes, my heart unmoved. I almost wanted to give her an Oscar for best performance in a guilt trip. "Not at all," I said, feigning innocence. I was genuinely thanking him. If it weren't for him, how would I have known my girlfriend was so eager to help? I reached out and gently wiped away a tear from the corner of her eye with my thumb. The gesture was tender, but my tone was ice cold. It also helped me see that for some people, all it takes is a little whining and playing the victim, and there will always be someone eager to rush to their aid. My words were like a needle, precisely piercing the fragile calm she was trying to maintain. Her tears fell even faster, and she was overwhelmed by a massive wave of guilt and helplessness. "I'm sorry, I really didn't know it would turn out like this. I'll never again." "Shh," I interrupted, pressing my finger to her lips. "Talk is cheap." She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, confused. "Don't you want to make it up to me?" I leaned in closer, my voice low and seductive. "Just calling me master once isn't enough." Her body trembled slightly, as if she knew what was coming. I took out my phone, opened the shopping app, and navigated to a piece of lingerie in my favorites, something I had looked at long ago but knew she would absolutely refuse. It was black lace, extremely sexy and barely there. I turned the screen to her. "Wear this for me." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a demand. Willow's face instantly flushed a deep red, the color spreading down her neck. Her eyes darted away as she mumbled, This is too much." "Too much what?" I feigned confusion. "Didn't you say you'd do anything for me?" Or, I paused, my tone turning cold. "Is your compensation just empty words? Just like your promises not to stand me up again?" The word guilt was like the most effective spell, instantly shattering her hesitation and shame. She bit her lower lip, as if making a monumental decision, squeezed her eyes shut, and practically snatched the phone from my hand, her voice trembling. I'll buy it." Watching her, looking like she was marching to her doom yet forced to comply, a twisted sense of pleasure rose within me. Yes, just like that, using her guilt to chain her, forcing her to retreat step by step, to satisfy all my unreasonable demands that she had once scoffed at. Collecting this interest was getting easier and easier. A few days later, after she had once again answered one of Ethan's emergency calls, apparently to help him pick out a birthday gift for his mom, "Did that really require someone's after-work hours?" She returned impossibly obedient. She actively snuggled up to me, her eyes wet and pleading. "Is there anything else you want me to do?" I looked at her like she was a new toy that had delivered itself to my doorstep, ready to be explored. I started suggesting things I'd seen online, making even more outrageous requests. Not in the living room, but in more private, more humiliating places, not just wearing something, but with a hint of role-playing. Each time she would blush, hesitate, and curl her toes in embarrassment. But each time, all it took was for me to show a hint of disappointment. If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm used to you breaking your promises anyway, or to mention, you sure run fast when Ethan calls, and that damn guilt would seize her instantly. Then, she would close her eyes, take a deep breath, and say in an almost tragic tone, "Okay." It was as if she was using this masochistic obedience to prove she loved me, to fill the void of debt she felt she owed me because of another man. Until one time, after another one of my explorations had succeeded, she lay limp in my arms, her breathing still uneven, and suddenly asked in a soft voice, a voice laced with an almost imperceptible despair, "Do you still love me? What are we doing?" The air went still. My hand stroking her hair paused for a moment, then resumed its motion. I said in a light tone, "Love? Is that important? You're making me happy right now, isn't that enough?" I felt her body go rigid. I continued to rub salt in her wounds, my voice now tinged with confusion. "I thought you wanted to make it up to me? You can't handle this already?" She lay silent in my arms for a long time. In the end, she swallowed all her words and tears and just held me tighter. She never asked again. I knew the shackles were now firmly locked in place, and I, the creditor, could start enjoying a much richer interest. Lately, it seemed like everyone on my social media feed had conspired to post wedding photos, diamond rings, and marriage licenses. Even scrolling through short videos, the algorithm would precisely target me with dreamy weddings and honeymoon trips. The atmosphere eventually got to Willow. She started to seem distracted. Sometimes, when we were watching TV and a wedding scene came on, she would murmur, "That bride's dress is beautiful." Or when we passed a jewelry store at the mall, she'd linger for a few extra seconds, her eyes shining as she gazed at the sparkling diamond rings in the window. She began to casually but intentionally bring things up. "My college roommate is getting married next month. She invited us. Look at this influencer's home decor, it's so cozy. I heard they're selling new apartments in that XX neighborhood. The school district is supposed to be good." Each time I would brush it off with a non-committal, "Oh, really?" or "That's nice," or "We'll see." The light in her eyes would dim slightly with my flat responses, but the next time she would gather her courage and try again in a different way. I could feel her trying to piece together a vague picture of our future from these fragmented hints, hoping I would take the brush and paint it with her. But I wouldn't. I acted like the most clueless guy on the planet, expertly dodging every hook she cast. Once, when she was gushing about a friend's romantic proposal, I yawned and said, "Sounds expensive. With that money, I'd rather get a new graphics card." She didn't say anything then, just silently lowered her head and poked at the rice in her bowl. The rest of that meal was eaten in heavy silence. The real blow came at a party with friends. A group of us were gathered around a hot pot, the mood lively. One of the guys, a little drunk, slung his arm around his girlfriend and started teasing us. "Hey, when are you two tying the knot? We're all waiting to chip in for a wedding gift." The table erupted in laughter, and all eyes turned to me and Willow. Willow's face flushed red. She shyly looked down, but the corners of her mouth couldn't help but curve into a smile. She secretly glanced up at me, her eyes full of hopeful anticipation, shining with a desperate longing for a certain answer. Everyone's attention was on me. I smiled, took a sip of my beer, and said, "What's the rush? I haven't saved up enough to get married yet." I paused, my gaze sweeping over Willow's instantly frozen face, and added slowly, "Besides, our Willow here has to help her male buddy settle his own life first. Where would I even get a turn?" The words hung in the air, and the lively atmosphere at the table instantly solidified. Everyone's smile froze on their face. Their eyes darted awkwardly between us. Even though Ethan wasn't there, his presence was everywhere. The only sound was the bubbling of the hot pot. The friend who started it all looked so embarrassed he probably wished he could bury his head in the pot. The color drained from Willow's face, turning a ghastly white. She snapped her head up to look at me, her eyes filled with disbelief, shock, and hurt. The light that had been sparkling in them just moments before shattered completely. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. Her eyes just quickly reddened. The second half of that hot pot dinner was incredibly tense. Willow kept her head down the entire time, barely touching her chopsticks, her shoulders trembling slightly. No one made any more jokes. Everyone just ate in silence, eager for the awkward ordeal to end. Back home, the moment the door closed, Willow, who had been silent the whole way, suddenly exploded. As if all her strength had been drained, she leaned against the door, and tears burst forth like a dam breaking. Her voice was shattered, laced with hysterical despair. "Do we even have a future? Do you just not want to marry me at all?" she sobbed, her whole body shaking as if trying to cry out all her grievances and anxieties. I watched her break down with an unnerving calm, even a touch of coldness. I waited for her sobs to subside a little before I spoke, my voice quiet but as sharp as a knife, stabbing her where it hurt the most. "You want the truth?" She lifted her tear-streaked face to look at me. "From the moment you started standing me up for Ethan, time and time again, and even after we fought about it countless times, you still didn't change a thing," I said, each word clear and cruel. "That's when I stopped thinking about marrying you." She gasped, as if someone had her by the throat. "Do you really think?" I took a step closer, looking directly into her eyes, which had turned instantly gray. "That I could trust that after we got married you wouldn't just leave, or even a potential child in the middle of the night because he had another emergency call and run off to help him?" That line was brutal. It was a sledgehammer blow that completely shattered all her fantasies and expectations. Willow's expression went blank for a second, then was consumed by immense pain and despair. As if all her energy had been sucked out, she slid down the door to the floor and let out a wail of agony, more shrill and hopeless than ever before. She understood. Some cracks, once they form, can never be repaired. Some trust, once it's broken, can never be rebuilt. She cried for a long, long time, her sobs tearing through her. I just stood there, watching her calmly, even offering her a box of tissues. Then, in a moment when her crying had quieted, I delivered the final blow with an almost cruel composure. "See, it's always like this. Whenever there's a problem you can't solve, all you do is cry. And then what? You do it again next time." Her sobs stopped abruptly. All that was left were suppressed, broken whimpers echoing in the empty entryway, filled with an endless despair. She finally, completely understood. There was no future for us anymore. After that devastating breakdown, the atmosphere at home dropped to absolute zero. Willow became very quiet, as if her soul had been removed. She still cooked and cleaned, and she still complied with my interest demands. But the light in her eyes was gone. She was more like an exquisite puppet, executing a program. She no longer probed about the future or mentioned anything about later. The dead silence of her despair was so thick even I found it suffocating. But the silence was soon broken by her mother's phone calls. They became noticeably more frequent, and 8 out of 10 times, Willow's eyes would be red after she hung up, her mood even lower. I didn't need to eavesdrop to guess what was being said. Her mom must have sensed something was wrong with her daughter. Plus, that warm-hearted Ethan would never miss an opportunity to score points. He had probably unintentionally dropped hints to her parents, things like, "Willow seems a bit down with her boyfriend lately," or, "I've been worried, she seems so unhappy." One weekend, Willow went to her parents' house. When she came back, her hands were full of bags of fruits and vegetables, but her face was grim. "From Mom," she said, placing the items in the kitchen, her voice flat. "She asked about us again." "Oh," I said without looking up from my game. She was silent for a moment, as if gathering courage, before finally speaking in a low voice, a voice with an almost imperceptible plea. She said, "Ethan visited them again a few days ago. He played chess with my dad and bought my mom a massager. She said he seems so reliable and down to earth, someone they know well." She paused, waiting for my reaction. "My character on screen was on a killing spree." I replied casually, "Yeah, Ethan really knows how to get on people's good side. Good for him." That clearly wasn't the response she wanted. She took a deep breath, her voice growing more urgent, laced with the panic of someone cornered. They seem to think that he's a better fit for me. They even said they want to arrange..." "Arrange what?" "Dinner." I finished my game and turned around to face her, looking at her with amusement. "Go. It's a nice gesture, and your parents approve. Don't disappoint them." I even smiled. "Ethan's a great guy. You're old classmates and good friends. You know each other inside and out. He's so warm-hearted. He'll definitely take great care of your parents in the future. You two are a good match, a good match." Those 3 words pierced her heart. The last trace of color drained from her face. She looked at me, and the final faint spark of hope in her eyes, the hope that I would argue, that I would stop this, that I would show even a tiny bit of jealousy was completely extinguished. All that remained were the cold, dead ashes of despair. She opened her mouth, as if to scream, to object, to ask me if I even had a heart, but in the end she said nothing. She just gave me one last, deep look, an expression so complex it made me uncomfortable for a second. Then she turned silently, walked into the bedroom, and closed the door. After that day, she never mentioned her family to me again, but I could feel the invisible pressure tightening around her. She started going home more often, and each time she returned she was a little more silent. When her phone rang, she would instinctively frown before taking the call on the balcony. Ethan's social media, on the other hand, had gone quiet. He was probably busy with his offline charm offensive, playing the part of the perfectly filial son-in-law to be. Until one evening she came back very late, a faint smell of alcohol on her. She didn't turn on the lights, just stood in the darkness of the entryway, looking at me. I put down my phone and looked back at her. In the dark, her voice was as dry as sandpaper. My parents, they set an engagement for me and Ethan. She spoke very slowly, each word seeming to take all her strength. When she finished, she just stood there, motionless, as if awaiting her final judgment. Perhaps, in the deepest part of her heart, there was still a 1 in a billion chance, a hope that I would explode in anger, that I would object, that I would pull her out of this whirlpool she didn't want to be in. I met her desperate gaze, and clearly and distinctly, with even a hint of relieved ease, I offered my congratulations. Congratulations. You finally got your wish. You and your male buddy can live happily ever after. Time seemed to stop. Then I saw 2 silent streams of tears slide down her cheeks. But she didn't make a sound, didn't break down and question me like before. She just slowly, very slowly, turned around, opened the door, and walked out. Her steps were unsteady, her silhouette fragile and thin in the dim light of the hallway. The door closed softly, shutting out the world. I knew that her last thread had snapped. The interest had been more or less collected. This long, drawn-out farce was finally coming to an end. The days that followed were mind-numbingly dull. Willow became exceptionally quiet. She no longer responded to any help signals from Ethan. Her phone was eerily silent. She no longer made any demands of me, or even looked at me. The silence wasn't one of pouting, but the withered state that comes after one's heart has died. She spent most of her time at her parents' house, likely busy accepting congratulations on her engagement from friends and family, all while being warmly enveloped by Ethan's family. The few times she came back, it was just to pick up some things, or perhaps she herself didn't know why she bothered to return. The air was thick with a silent, suffocating farewell. Tomorrow was her wedding to Ethan. That evening she came back. No call beforehand, she just appeared. She was dressed simply, almost casually, her face a mask of strange calm. But deep in her eyes, a violent emotional storm was brewing, like the final stillness before a volcanic eruption. She was carrying a grocery bag with a few beers and some deli food. "Let's have dinner," she said, her voice devoid of any ripple. "One last time." I said nothing, just nodded. The meal was eaten in profound silence. We sat across from each other without a word, mechanically eating, occasionally clinking our beer bottles. The alcohol did nothing to ease the tension. Instead, it intensified the heavy, unspoken sense of farewell. After dinner, she cleared the table. The sound of running water came from the kitchen. I sat in the living room, sensing the finality in her every movement. The water stopped. She came out. Instead of going to her room, she walked over and stood in front of me. She just stood there, looking down at me, the light behind her creating a blurry halo. Her expression was so complex it startled me, a mix of pain, despair, resentment, love, and an almost crazed determination. "Tomorrow," she began, her voice trembling slightly, though she fought to keep it steady. "After tomorrow, I'll be Mrs. Miller." I grunted in acknowledgement, waiting for her to continue. She took a deep breath, as if it took all her strength to get the next words out. "I know. We were over a long time ago. It's my fault. I don't deserve anything from you anymore." Her tears finally fell, rolling down her cheeks in large drops, but she didn't wipe them away. "But the only person I've ever loved has always been you," she choked out. "Just for tonight. After tonight, I will completely belong to someone else. I will give myself to him. Completely." She couldn't go on, just stared at me with those eyes full of tears and despair, with a plea that was as humble as dust. Think of it as a farewell, or a memorial. Her voice was as light as a sigh. Let me have you one last time and let you have me one last time, okay? This wasn't compensation, not guilt. This was a sacrifice. Before completely burying her love and her future, she wanted to offer herself as a sacrifice to the first and only person she had ever loved. She wanted to hold on to something that was purely Willow Hayes and not Mrs. Miller, even if it was just for one night. I looked at her, this woman I had once genuinely loved, and then tormented in the cruelest ways. In this moment, stripped of all pretense, all that was left was the deepest pain and the humblest request. I felt no joy, no thrill of revenge, just a complex, heavy calm, and a hint of pity I couldn't quite name. As if possessed, I nodded. The instant I did, she threw herself at me, kissing me with a desperate, almost frantic passion. Her kiss was salty and forceful, mixed with the taste of her tears, as if she were trying to burn herself to ashes. That night had nothing to do with interest or revenge. It was more like a funeral and a sacrifice. It was filled with a desperate, clinging passion, yet saturated with boundless despair and sorrow. She was more proactive, more invested than ever before, as if trying to brand her very soul into my body. It was her way of saying a final goodbye to everything that had passed. When it was over, dawn was breaking. She lay quietly beside me, not sleeping, not crying. She just stared blankly at the ceiling, as if all her spirit had been drained away. After a long time, she slowly sat up and began to get dressed. Each movement was slow and stiff, like a marionette. She didn't look at me again, didn't say another word. Once dressed, she walked to the door and paused for a few seconds, her hand on the doorknob. Her back was thin and fragile, as if she might shatter at any moment. Then, she turned the knob and walked out. The door clicked shut softly. It sounded like the final gavel of a judgment. I was alone in the room, the air still holding the faint scent of her perfume and the lingering aroma of the night's frenzy. A long, twisted farce, filled with hate and guilt, love and revenge, had finally, with that soft click, come to an end. Interest paid in full. We didn't owe each other anything anymore. A few days later, my life fell into a new, refreshingly clear rhythm. I no longer had to worry about being stood up, no longer had my mood ruined by some manipulative guy's social media posts. I focused on work, got a small promotion and a raise. On weekends I played basketball, drank and gamed with the crew. Life was full and easy. Occasionally, I'd hear bits and pieces about Willow from mutual friends. She got married. It was a pretty big wedding. Ethan's family made a big deal of it. I think she quit her job. Ethan said he makes enough for her to be a stay-at-home wife. Man, I saw her the other day. She looked so thin, like all the life had been drained out of her. That last comment came from a female friend I was still close with, her tone laced with a sigh. I listened, my heart unmoved. A stay-at-home wife enjoying life? Knowing Ethan's character and his calculating family with Willow-esque personality, it'd be a miracle if she didn't get skinned alive. The so-called life of leisure sounded more like an exquisite cage. It seemed my interest had been fully collected, but someone else was starting to provide after-sales service, though not at my request. One Saturday afternoon, I was at home gaming when a message notification popped up on my phone. It was from a contact I had almost forgotten, Willow Hayes. It had been a long time since her last message announcing her engagement. The message was simple, almost abrupt. "Are you there?" I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the screen for a few seconds. The first time she'd contacted me since the wedding? Life must be pretty rough. I smirked and didn't reply immediately. Only after finishing my current round did I leisurely pick up the phone. I sent back a question mark. She replied almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting by her phone. "It's nothing. It's just that gaming account you used to have. Didn't it have a really rare skin?" My husband's cousin wants it. I heard it's hard to buy, and I remembered you might know a way." A clumsy excuse. I could almost picture her, phone in hand, racking her brain to come up with such a lame reason. Her cousin wanting it? It was obviously her, looking for an excuse to reconnect. I smiled and typed, "Yeah, I do. What, you need me to ask around for you? If you could, that would be great. Sorry to bother you," she replied quickly, followed by a thank you sticker. "No bother, happy to help," I replied magnanimously. "But my contact is overseas right now, time difference and all. I'll get in touch with him later." Okay, thank you so much." She sent several thank yous in a row. The conversation should have ended there, but I didn't let it. A few minutes later, I sent another message, by the way, since I have you here. I think my computer has a virus, keeps getting pop-ups, it's driving me crazy. I remember you reinstalled Ethan's system once, you were pretty good at it. Got any simple antivirus software to recommend? Or maybe you could help me out remotely? I had thrown a problem that a simple search could solve right back at her. The other end was silent for a minute or two. Then, okay, I can try. No guarantees I can fix it. See? Even married, even to the very man she used to ditch me for, that deep-seated guilt and need to compensate still worked on me. And just like that, the after-sales service began. From then on, these small favors started popping up every now and then. Sometimes it was a tricky, work email in English. Too lazy to use a dictionary, I'd screenshot it and send it to her. Take a look at this, what's this foreigner saying? It's urgent. Sometimes I'd be inexplicably irritable and send a message late at night. You asleep? Feeling down? Care to chat? Once a new dessert shop opened downstairs from me. I took a picture and sent it directly to her. This mango pomelo sago looks good. If you're in the area, could you grab one for me? I'll transfer you the money. Every single time, she would reply. Every single time, she would do her best to help. Even with my late-night emotional dumping, she would chat with me for a bit, though her tone always maintained a cautious distance. Even when the dessert shop was nowhere near her home, she would make a special trip to buy it and deliver it to my building, not even daring to come up, just asking me to come down and get it. She was like a submissive customer service agent, conditioned to respond to a summons, and I, her ex-boyfriend, had become a bizarre, inescapable, very important client in her marriage. I could sense that in this state of being needed, she found a twisted way to prove her own value, and perhaps to briefly escape the unpleasant reality of her marriage. Until one time, after I'd asked her to help me compile some complex industry report data, I knew she was good at it from her admin days. She worked late into the night. After sending it to me, she couldn't resist asking, "Do you need this? Are you planning on changing jobs?" I didn't have a chance to reply. The next afternoon, I saw a follow-up message she'd sent in the early hours of the morning, her tone frantic. "I'm so sorry, Ethan saw our chat history on my computer last night. He got a little angry. I didn't mean anything by it, just a casual question. I didn't cause you any trouble, did I?" I looked at the message, imagining the fight that must have erupted between them. I smiled and replied at a leisurely pace, "It's fine. What's he got to be angry about? Weren't you just being helpful? Isn't that what he always admired most about you?" The opportunity came sooner than I expected. A friend was getting married and had booked a hotel ballroom. These events are always a melting pot of social circles, a hot spot for awkward encounters. Sure enough, I had just grabbed a glass of champagne and was chatting with some acquaintances when I saw the perfect couple. Ethan was wearing a slightly too tight suit, his hair slicked back with gel. He was trying hard to look successful and confident, but he couldn't hide the calculating look and faint anxiety in his eyes. Willow was beside him in a tasteful blush-colored dress. She had makeup on, but it couldn't conceal the exhaustion and emptiness on her face. They saw me too. Ethan's expression immediately darkened. He instinctively tightened his grip on Willow's wrist, making her wince. Willow, on the other hand, quickly looked down, her face turning even paler as she took a half-step back. I smiled and walked over, champagne glass in hand. "Well, what a coincidence," I said cheerfully, as if I'd run into an old classmate. "Congratulations, you two. To a happy marriage and a long life together." I raised my glass, my eyes sweeping over Ethan's sour face and Willow's helpless one. Ethan squeezed out 2 words through his teeth. "Thanks." The atmosphere instantly turned ice cold. "Willow," I turned to her naturally, as if I hadn't seen Ethan's murderous glare, my tone familiar. "Glad I ran into you. That industry report you helped me with last time, there were a few figures I wasn't sure about. Did you verify them?" Willow's head snapped up, her panicked eyes darting between me and Ethan. Her lips trembled, unable to form words. Ethan's face was now completely black. "What report?" he hissed, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "When did she help you with a report?" "Oh, just the other day," I said with an innocent, almost grateful smile. "Didn't Willow tell you?" "Oh, well, it was probably just a small favor. She must have been too modest to mention it. She was a huge help, though. I would have been totally lost without her." My words were like a drop of water in hot oil. They instantly exploded. Ethan whipped his head around to glare at Willow, his eyes so fierce he looked like he wanted to eat her alive. A few nearby guests had noticed the tension and were now watching curiously. Willow flinched, instinctively leaning a half-step closer to me as if for protection, her voice tearful. I was just... Mr. Miller, is something wrong? I cut her off, my tone a mix of surprise and feigned hurt. It was just a small favor. Is that something to get angry about? I thought you were the most magnanimous, the most eager to help person around. Willow used to help you with so much and I never said a word. I put heavy emphasis on eager to help. Every syllable was like a slap across Ethan's face. It was a devastatingly personal attack. Ethan was shaking with anger, a vein throbbing in his forehead. He pointed a finger at my nose, but held back from shouting due to the public setting. Don't you push it too far, you son of a bitch, me? Pushing it? I laughed, my voice low but clear enough for the eavesdroppers to hear. I was just thanking your esteemed wife for her warm-heartedness. What? Now that she's married, she can't even help out an old friend? Mr. Miller, isn't your need for control a little... extreme? I turned to the pale, trembling Willow, my tone becoming considerate and resigned. It seems your husband is not pleased. Never mind then, I'll be sure not to trouble you in the future to avoid any misunderstandings. With that, I sighed, shook my head as if to say no good deed goes unpunished, raised my glass to the onlookers, and walked away with a flourish. I left Ethan standing there, his face ashen, unable to erupt in front of everyone. All he could do was glare daggers at Willow, hissing questions at her through clenched teeth. Willow kept her head down, her shoulders shaking violently as tears streamed down her face. Against the festive backdrop, she looked both pathetic and ridiculous. I went to the buffet table and picked up a small piece of cake, feeling as refreshed as if I'd just had an ice-cold soda on a scorching summer day. One of the guys came over and whispered, "Damn, what was that all about?" Ethan looked like he was about to explode. I took a bite of the cake. The cream was sweet but not cloying. It was nothing, I shrugged, my voice light. Just suddenly realized that the things I used to think were insurmountable are actually nothing at all. Yeah, if you're not going to marry her, who cares who she gets close to? I added slowly, my gaze drifting over to the loving couple still arguing in the distance, a smirk playing on my lips. But from the looks of it, she still seems to listen to me more. Collecting this, long overdue interest, was so damn worth it. As for how they'd fight when they got home, or where their cesspool of a marriage would end up, not my damn problem. I hummed an off-key tune and melted back into the noisy crowd. The sky had cleared, the rain had stopped, and I felt like I was back on top of my game. The little drama at the wedding reception was like a stone tossed into a stagnant pond, and the ripples lasted far longer than I'd imagined. The very next morning, I received a long series of messages from Willow. They were filled with apologies, explanations, and a near breakdown level of helplessness. She said Ethan had started a huge fight with her when they got home, throwing things and saying horrible things, even accusing her of having an affair with me the whole time. She repeatedly insisted it was just a small favor, that she had no other intentions, and begged me not to be angry at Ethan's reaction. She apologized profusely for causing me trouble. I looked at the dense block of text on the screen, almost feeling the trembling of her fingers and the despair in her heart as she typed. Her past guilt had now become a heavy shackle in her marriage, and I, holding the key, could apparently give it a twist every now and then, just to remind her it was there. I didn't bother reading it all closely, I just replied, "It's fine. Your husband overreacted. The innocent need no defense." A single breezy sentence that completely invalidated all her emotions and struggles. What could she say to that? Admit that Ethan hadn't overreacted? That would be admitting she had ulterior motives. She went quiet for a while after that. No more messages. I was happy for the peace and quiet, and truly began to enjoy my single life. Without all that toxic drama draining my energy, I found that I was seeing the world in a better light. I was more effective at work, even having a breakthrough on a project that had been stalled for ages. The look my boss gave me practically screamed. The kid's finally got his head on straight. On weekends, I joined an amateur basketball team with the guys. We'd play a couple of games a week, and the feeling of sore muscles after a good sweat was 1,000 times better than the ache of suppressed anger. I even, at the urging of a teammate, started seeing someone new, a kindergarten teacher named Vivian Scott, who had cute canine teeth when she smiled and would genuinely cheer for me at games. Being with her was easy. No suspicion, no mind games, just simple, direct happiness. It was only then that I realized what a healthy relationship was supposed to feel like. I realized the sky could be this blue, the air this fresh. Occasionally, I'd still hear updates about Willow from that female friend. Apparently, her relationship with Ethan had hit rock bottom. They were practically strangers living in the same house. Ethan, feeling he'd lost face, had become even more controlling and critical at home, and she had grown even more silent, like a rapidly wilting flower. My friend would sigh with pity when she told me, "Gosh, why did she have to?" I would listen, my heart a calm, still lake. It was like hearing a distant, sad story about people who no longer had anything to do with me. She chose her path. She had to live with the consequences. I'm no saint. I had neither the obligation nor the interest to save her from the mess she was in. One sunny weekend afternoon, Vivian and I were just leaving a movie theater when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Willow. It was long, but the core of it could be summarized in one sentence. He won't agree to an uncontested divorce. I don't think I can take it anymore. It was followed by a long, chaotic jumble of pained and confused words. I looked at the message, then at Vivian beside me, chattering away about the movie plot, her eyes sparkling. The sunlight caught the fine hairs on her face, and she was brimming with life and vitality. I looked down, my thumb hovering over the screen for a moment. Then I deleted the message, along with the contact and all the ugly history that came with it. "What do you want to eat tonight?" I put my phone away, naturally slinging my arm over Vivian's shoulder with a smile. "Ooh, I want hot pot, the super spicy kind, you got it." Yes, the sky had cleared, the rain had stopped, and that swampy mess of a past was finally completely left behind. My new life was just beginning, and the future was bright.